Good to see you. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this really event that we're all excited for. My name is Portia Percy. I work in USAID's water office. And I'm really happy to welcome you to the Reaching a Water Secure World U.S. Global Water Strategy Workshop. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to those folks who are live streaming the event, and also to let you know, folks here in the room, if you have colleagues who are unable to attend in person today, please let them know that they are able to live stream the morning sessions. If you go to the actual invite that was sent out, at the bottom of the Eventbrite invite, you'll see a link to the live streaming option. Also, a little bit about social media. For those of you who may be sort of tweeting about the event on social media, we'd encourage you to use the handle @USAIDWater and use the hashtag WaterSecureWorld. So I'll be serving as your facilitator today, and during the day we'll be touching base as we move through the sessions, and I know that I, along with my interagency colleagues, are really excited to sort of kick off this conversation around strategy implementation. This morning, before we begin, I'd just like to touch on a couple of things, talk to you quickly about the purpose of the workshop, the flow of the day, and the logistics for the day. So as you all know, and while we're here, in November 2017, we issued the Global Water Strategy in accordance with the Senator Paul Simon Water for the World Act of 2014. Today, we're really here to talk about the way forward, how we, the interagency, collaborate with you, our partner community, around implementation of the strategy. So now turning to the flow of the day, we'll begin with opening remarks from Jim Peters, USAID Acting Global Water Coordinator and Deputy Assistant Administrator for USAID's E3 Bureau, and also from Erin Salzburg, Special Coordinator for Water Resources at the Department of State and the Bureau of Oceans, Environment, and Science Affairs. Then we'll move into the interagency panel, where you'll have a chance to hear from our interagency colleagues who are involved in the development of the Global Water Strategy. We'll take a short coffee break, and then we'll move into what should be a really interesting session on USG coordination at the country level. That way you'll really get a sense of the field focus we feel is important for the strategy, and you'll hear a little bit more about our operational policy processes that guide our programming in the field. Then we'll move into lunch, where you'll have a chance to sort of mingle and chat with the interagency colleagues and really to have one-on-one conversations around the strategy and implementation. After that, we'll sort of get down to the meat of our discussions in the afternoon. We'll have 2 rounds of concurrent breakout sessions where you'll have a chance to really join conversations that focus around each strategic objective under the Global Water Strategy. And as you remember, as you checked in, you sort of identified the breakout sessions that you plan to attend this afternoon. So keep that in mind as you prepare for that 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. breakout session. So the sessions, I think, are going to be really interesting. You'll have a chance to sort of talk about what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and what are the recommendations that the group identifies around each of the strategic objectives for the Global Water Strategy. And remember, at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, you'll have the first breakout session, and at 2 o'clock, you'll hear the USIP lovely chime, and you'll know that it's time to move to your second breakout session. And then at 3 o'clock, you'll hear the chime again, and then you'll move directly into a coffee break. And at 3:15, we'll all reconvene here in the Great Hall, and you'll have a chance to hear from the breakout session leads what were the key top-line takeaways from each one of the concurrent sessions, and that'll help us to come to sort of a common understanding of what the conversations were about around each of the strategic objectives. And then we will sort of have some closing remarks from both Erin and Jim to really give us a sense of what the key takeaways are and what are sort of final words to help us frame the day. And so I'll close with a little bit about logistics, really things to keep in mind for your day here at USIP. Starting with the gathering spaces. We're here in the Great Hall. In terms of the breakout sessions, this is where you might want to sort of key your ear. The drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene breakout session will be here in the Great Hall. The water sector governance, finance, and institutions sessions will be in room B203/204, which is located in the floor above. The water resource management breakout session will be in the Peace Links room, which is located to the rear of the Great Hall. The transboundary water resources session will be held in room B214/215, which is also located on the floor above. In addition, just to let you know, there are restrooms both to the rear of the Great Hall and upstairs. And there's also an elevator to the rear of the Great Hall if you'd like to take that to go upstairs. So now that you've heard a little bit about the flow of the day and a little bit about logistics, I'd like to introduce the opening remarks section of the day. I'd like to introduce Jim Peters, who, as I mentioned earlier, is the Acting Global Water Coordinator and DAA for the USAID's E3 Bureau. Prior to arriving to E3, where he oversees both the water and business development, professional development, and management services portfolio, Jim served as Deputy Mission Director for USAID Pakistan, where his portfolio included program, financial, and executive management offices and the education program. Prior to serving in Pakistan, Jim was Assistant General Counsel for Ethics and Administration here in Washington, where he was responsible for a myriad of ethics and administrative law matters. In 2014, Jim also served as the Acting Mission Director for USAID Albania, and he actually also served as the Acting Director for USAID's Office of Education here in Washington in 2015. Prior to joining USAID, Jim was an attorney and served in the Air Force as a member of the Judge Advocate General's Department, where he attained the rank of Major and held a variety of criminal prosecution and civil litigation positions, and also served an assignment at Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey. Jim received a BA from the University of Illinois in 1984 with a major in international relations. He is a 1987 graduate of the University of Illinois College of Law. Before I ask Jim to join the stage, I'd like to also share with you a bit about Erin Salzburg's background. Erin serves as the Special Coordinator for Water Resources at the Department of State and the Bureau of Oceans, Environment, and Science Affairs. Erin leads states' engagement on transboundary water issues in many regions throughout the world where water is or may become a source of tension or conflict. Erin works with USAID and others on the development and implementation of water resources management and drinking water and sanitation policies. In addition, Erin has been the lead representative or lead water advisor for the United States at several major international events, including the G8, the World Summit on Sustainable Development, the UN Commission on Sustainable Development, and the World Water Forums. Erin has a PhD in genetics toxicology and a master's degree in technology and policy from MIT. In addition, he also holds a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Maryland. With that, I'd like to welcome Jim to the stage for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Portia, and it's good to be here with you today. I know as Portia was describing the run of show, it sounded very regimented, very like we all have to be at a certain place at a certain time. I know how these things work, and things kind of devolve and evolve, and let's just go with the flow. And there is a water pun for everything. I want to start off by really thanking this group. This is my second World Water occasion during my tenure as the Acting Global Water Coordinator for USAID, and I've had the opportunity over this past year and couple months to get to know many of you and to get to know what your various perspectives are, and it gives me a real appreciation for what you do. And what we want to talk about today is both what you've done and what we've all done together, and the advancements that we've made, but also what we're going to do moving forward, and how we're going to pull that all together and synthesize it just like we did as we pulled together the Global Water Strategy. As you know, there's a lot to do. Over 2 billion people still live without access to safely managed drinking water in their homes. Urban water infrastructure is aging, and there's large gaps in access to rural water supply. And something I know, having traveled around a bit, sanitation access lags far behind the progress made on drinking water. Women and girls are overwhelmingly burdened with collecting water and excluded from leadership roles in key decision-making processes in the sector. Cyclical droughts, which are increasing in regularity and intensity, threaten livelihoods and stability. For the past 10 years, water-related foreign assistance has been met with strong support across diverse constituencies. This is testament to the generosity of the American people to help the world's most vulnerable people with their basic water and sanitation needs. USAID's water, sanitation, and hygiene assistance helps partner countries prevent disease, advance opportunities for women and girls, and helps fragile states deliver basic services to their people. Since 2008, our assistance has resulted in 37 million people gaining access to clean drinking water and 24 million people gaining access to improved sanitation. But we know that official development assistance is not enough to help partner countries move away from aid and towards self-reliance. It's estimated that upwards of $114 billion per year of capital expenditures will be required to achieve universal access to safe water and sanitation services by 2030. That's 3 times the current global investment levels and greater than all official global aid funding combined. To help close this gap, we need to mobilize new sources of financing. We need sustainable water and sanitation services that reach the most vulnerable. We also need to increase our diplomatic engagement to promote cooperation. We have to harness innovation and scientific expertise, and we need to follow through on these actions that protect vital water resources. The U.S. Global Water Strategy, with which I hope you're all familiar, and please grab a copy and multiple copies if you want to bring them back to your offices. That's a whole of government endeavor. Represents better part of a year's worth of work on behalf of many of the people in this room. It was released last November. Our vision is a water-secure world where people and nations have the water they need to be healthy, prosperous, and resilient. And in this new era, under the Global Water Strategy, the U.S. will focus on 4 core strategic objectives, including promoting sustainable access to drinking water and sanitation services, and the adoption of key hygiene behaviors, encouraging sound water resources management, reducing conflict by promoting cooperation on shared waters, and strengthening sector governance, financing, and institutions. Following my remarks, my friend Erin Salzburg will discuss the whole of government strategy in greater detail and what it means going forward. But I want to focus right now on USAID's Water and Development Plan, which, as you know, is part of the strategy. This plan has many new approaches and represents lessons learned from implementing the agency's previous water strategy. Now, this lays out some important shifts and priorities, but also continues with many of the themes that made our last strategy successful. At the core of our new agency plan is strengthening governance and institutions and mobilizing innovative financing to help partner countries move away from donor assistance and towards self-reliance. The strategy also elevates sanitation and hygiene as a priority focus area due to its immense impact on global public health and the lives of women and children. As water resources become more stressed, we emphasize the importance of protecting drinking water supplies for future generations. Elevating the protection of freshwater resources is also a major change from the priorities set in our previous agency water strategy. And we also see empowering women to be leaders in the water and sanitation sector as a key cross-cutting issue. USAID's contributions to the global water strategy build upon over a decade of successes, challenges, and lessons learned from our water and sanitation assistance. The strategy wasn't primarily developed from Washington. Instead, it was created from the bottom up and in alignment with our partner country priorities. Kenya is an example of the new direction we're taking with strategy implementation. USAID Kenya, our sister agencies, and other donor partners are working with the Kenyan government and private sector to foster market-based solutions and promote reforms to water and sanitation sector. The government of Kenya has made strong commitments toward improving water and sanitation access for its citizens, including reforms and devolution of services to local counties. The public sector has increased its funding to address water and sanitation challenges, but more than 60% of the sector funding is still coming from external donors. Overall, the sector still has significant funding gaps. And to fill the funding gap, USAID has helped catalyze new sources of financing for Kenya's water and sanitation service providers. To date, USAID Kenya has helped mobilize over $62 million of commercial financing into the WASH sector. This has resulted in more households, schools, and health facilities receiving safe drinking water. You might be asking, why am I talking about Kenya so much? I just returned from Kenya. I had a very enlightening trip there. It wasn't any surprise that Kenya was the first place that I visited after we released our global water strategy. Because as I said repeatedly there, they're hitting on all the cylinders that we're stressing in our agency plan. I witnessed how we've supported the construction of water enterprises that's reduced the distance women travel to get water from an average of 5 kilometers to less than 1 kilometer. This gave back precious time for girls to attend school and women to use their time productively. In addition to improving access, USAID is working to empower women as agents of change in Kenya's water sector by helping local water utilities develop a gender workplace policy and give women more of a voice in service delivery. I'm confident that we can continue to work with Kenya and our other partner countries on a path toward a secure water future, not defined by scarcity and inequality. So our goal today is to bring the folks in this room together we could look backward a little bit, maybe congratulate ourselves just a tiny bit, but how do we go forward? And by congratulating ourselves a tiny bit, I mean we did the global water strategy. That was quite an endeavor, but it doesn't mean anything as long as it's just words on a piece of paper. We need to move forward on that. We need to implement that. That's what we're looking for your input on. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend Erin, but let me just point out that there is a panel, an interagency panel that's coming up after us, but Erin and I are going to remain on the stage for just a bit to ask any questions that you have regarding the overarching big picture approach to the global water strategy and its implementation. So thank you very much, Erin.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Portia, for the introduction. They always leave out that I was published in Glamour magazine. I think that's important, and somehow it gets dropped from my bio every time, you know, and I'm not sure why, but we should. But good morning, and again, just to reiterate what Jim said, thank you. Look, I know it's not easy to take a day out of your busy schedules to give us your thoughts and ideas about how we can best leverage your expertise and resources to implement this strategy, but we very much appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to be with us here today, so thank you very much. Look, sorry, I've got a copy here. You know, this has been a long trip, and some of you may recall back to the time where we had the Water for the Poor Act and the development of the framework for how the United States approached international water issues really goes back to that time, almost more than a decade, when the Interagency Water Working Group put together its response to the Senator Paul Simon Water for the Poor Act. Some of you may recall we had a similar workshop to this back in 2005. In fact, I see a couple of faces here who I think were at that meeting. So this has been a long road, but a number of things have actually changed, I think, since 2005 that make this strategy more important today. While the world has made a lot of progress in reducing the number of people without access to drinking water, there's clearly much more that needs to be done to ensure the safety, to ensure the sustainability, to ensure access to safe drinking water. And as we've heard many times, to make more progress on sanitation, which really lags behind internationally. The lack of access to these basic services is not only a threat to the health and economic well-being of people throughout the world, but these conditions increase migration pressures, they promote civil unrest, they contribute to terrorist recruitment, and all these things can prevent countries from working on priorities that are important to the United States, and these are challenges that have not gone away. At the same time, we're facing some new challenges, and I think all of you know this very well. There are a number of countries that have become increasingly water insecure. To be blunt, they're either running out of water or they're experiencing such high levels of variability in supplies that they're not able to sustainably provide the water that their country needs for domestic, for economic, for environmental uses. And these countries, I mean, let's be serious here. I mean, these countries are at risk of increased fragility and failure if we can't get these things right. And those things can certainly impact our ability to carry out our foreign policy goals and objectives. And finally, of course, we're seeing growing tensions over shared waters. The math here is pretty simple. As water resources become more scarce, more variable, more polluted, competition will increase, which can exacerbate tensions in already conflict-prone regions of the world, and instability anywhere is not good for the United States. And so these were the challenges that we really hoped to respond to with this new global water strategy. The strategy was developed over the course of the year under the auspices of the Interagency Water Working Group, which you've heard a little bit about already today. More than 20 U.S. government agencies and departments are part of the IWIG. Many of them are here today. In fact, you'll see a lot of them on the panel, but you won't see all of them. And I do want you to see all of them. I'm wondering if could all of the U.S. government folks stand up for a second, just so that people can see who you are? Just to give you a sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about the interagency group and the breadth and the scope of the knowledge and expertise. Some of my long-standing mentors are part of this group. I see John Wilson, I see Vern Schneider, Chuck Lawson. These are people who guided me when I first came to work on water. This is the brainchild of how we think through what the United States government should do on water, and this is just a subset of them. And to be frank, we have over 200 people who are on our distribution list, and we have 50 or so that actively participate in our process. It's a very robust group, and it really is the brains of how the United States government is responding to these challenges. We also received a lot of outside inputs on the strategy. We had the public listening session that we hosted in 2016, which many of you were at, web-based surveys, open email calls. We received, Oliver, you'll correct me, but I keep saying over 100 comments or so. Is that about right? Over 100 comments and suggestions on what we should consider when developing this strategy. So all of this was kind of fed into our process. As Jim mentioned, the goal of our strategy is to improve water security. And this is a vision where the world, simply put, where people have the water they need, when they need it, where they need it, without living in fear of floods and droughts. It's a simple concept, but obviously very hard to do. Jim mentioned our 4 strategic objectives: increasing access to safe drinking water, improving water resources management, promoting cooperation, strengthening water sector governance. We'll be doing this through technical assistance, through investing in infrastructure, promoting science and technology, engaging diplomatically, mobilizing financial resources, strengthening partnerships and intergovernmental organizations, In each of these individual areas, we're going to be seeking to achieve measurable results through coordinated, a whole-of-government, public-private partnership approach, which, of course, is why everyone is here today. The different U.S. government agencies and departments will each be contributing to implementing this strategy in their own unique way. They each bring a different set of skills, experiences, and expertise to these sets of problems. You'll hear more about this on the panel discussion that follows, but this will only be some of the panels. I really do encourage those of you who are interested, look in the strategy. There are 16, I think, including state and AID, agency-specific strategies in here, and I encourage, take a look at the different agencies that are all there, because not all of them will be represented in our panel discussion. In this strategy, we also talk about the selection of priority countries and geographic areas. I know this is important to many people in the room. In general, the United States is going to focus its efforts on those countries and geographic areas where the needs are greatest, where U.S. engagement can best protect our national security interests, and where the countries themselves are committed to making the reforms necessary to ensure that U.S. dollars lead to measurable and sustainable results on the ground. Now, a subset of these priority countries and regions will be selected based on the criteria established in the Senator Paul Simon Water for the World Act of 2014. And this list of countries for 2018 fiscal year is listed in the strategy. And for each of these individual countries, a summary of the country-specific implementation plan has been developed by USAID, and it's also included in the strategy. And so I encourage those of you who are interested in those countries specifically to take a more detailed look and talk to our AID colleagues. Everyone in this room and everyone online knows how hard this is. Achieving global results demands that we take a comprehensive approach to ensuring access to sustainable supplies of water, not just for drinking, but for agriculture, for energy, for the environment, and for the 100 of other uses that are critical to human well-being and local livelihoods. What's clear is that we, the United States government, we're not going to be able to do this alone. Over the coming year, we're going to be working with partners like you to identify best practices, new and innovative approaches, and to identify areas where we can work together to leverage our respective skills and achieve our shared goals. And that's what we really hope to get out of today's workshop, a better sense of how we can work more closely with you to implement the objectives of this strategy in a very concrete way. A partnership that will take us closer to a more water-secure world. Which, we're only a week away from World Water Day, and that's not a bad message for World Water Day, and that's what we're about. This is a whole of government, whole of America approach to solving the world's water problems. Which, by the way, just on World Water Day, just a quick plug, for those of you who might not be aware, the U.S. Water Partnership and the Department of State will be hosting a half-day workshop at the Department of State on World Water Day to talk about U.S. tools for scaling up exports of U.S. technologies to address global water challenges. For those of you who are more interested in the private sector side of this, you might find it interesting. I think there are flyers upstairs. Hopefully you'll be able to join us. There's some down here at the table at that too. So hopefully you can join us. So with all that in mind, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
So with that, we're happy to open up for a couple of questions for Jim or Erin before we move on, as our interagency panel gets ready to take the stage. Questions? There's going to be someone with the mic moving around. Show of hands, no questions? Oh, okay.
Hi, quick question. I'm Nancy Serby from NASA. So I'm interested to hear, I'm happy to see USAID and State Department here. How do you think you'll be working closer together? Say Kenya, since I know we just were hearing about Kenya. Do you have some ideas specifically how we can use the two Ds together to make more difference? Diplomacy and development?
Well, mine's working, so I'll
Not very well, no.
I'll just start that one. So I hope that we'll continue in terms of working together. I hope we'll continue what we've already developed and take that on as we proceed. The way that the global water strategy and the priority country designations work was very much from the ground up at the country level. And so we pulled from what was being done in country, kind of pulled the strategic themes when we looked at them all. We pulled the strategic themes out of it, ran it through the Washington Interagency Working Group, and shot it back to not USAID Kenya, but to the Kenya Embassy country team. And it was very much the ambassador calling together the country team and saying, what do you think about this? And then that fed into the strategy. So it was very much a bottom-up process, but throughout the whole process, incorporating the entire interagency, not just state and aid.
To this. Yeah, no, thanks. Actually, thanks for asking the question. I mean, this has been an incredibly collaborative relationship and one that's actually grown over the last 10 or 15 years. And I think, you know, from the department's perspective, we really look at our role as using our diplomatic resources to overcome impediments that might be preventing our being able to do the kind of development work that we want to be able to do on the ground. So in countries or regions where we don't have the right agreements between countries, in countries and regions where we don't have the right level of political commitment by the country's leadership, that these are issues that they should be prioritizing. When we're dealing with institutions, either the UN or World Bank or other institutions where we can help shape the policy direction, the course of their investments to better support, to better complement what we're trying to do on the ground. That's kind of where we see our role fitting in with them. But again, it's a very collaborative relationship. We talk quite a bit. We're connected at the hip these days. Maybe more so than Portia would like, but no.
Any other questions? Looks like we've got a question up front. The mic is making its way to you. Good morning, John.
Good morning, everybody. John Oldfield with Global Water 2020. Question for all three of you, really. Erin, you mentioned specifically this is a whole of government and whole of America U.S. global water strategy. Give you a chance to drill into what does whole of America mean. You know, call them public-private partnerships, call them partnerships between corporate types and NGO types. How does the Interagency Water Working Group feed into and feed from that? Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think a good example is what's going to be happening on World Water Day. I mean, we look at the U.S. private sector as an opportunity to help introduce some of the ideas, some of the technologies, some of the approaches that we in the United States have for addressing these challenges overseas. And the question is, what can we as the U.S. government agencies do to help facilitate that? What can TDA, OPIC, XM, Commerce, what are the tools that are available at USAID to leverage and help support private sector interests that are trying to actively engage in these types of markets? What are the policy reforms that we can argue for that would better enable the U.S. private sector to compete with outside actors in some of these markets? I think these are all things that we can do. I think the same is true, you know, for the nonprofit community as well, as we begin to look at the implementation of these country plans on a country-by-country level. There's going to be activities that we're not well suited for. There's going to be expertise that lies outside the United States government that we hope to be able to tap into that will allow us to reach our shared goals and objectives. And so, yeah, that's going to be done at the country level. I think that's a session that's going to happen after the expert panel. There's going to be a long discussion about that. So I think it's a great question to ask when Jeff and others get up here.
I just say that the lag or the disparity between what we can do with donor money and what the potential is with private capital is so enormous that it's impossible without a collective result or a collective effort among all of us, and looking at things innovatively, providing catalysts and harnessing that.
I think I saw a couple more hands maybe here.
Morning, everyone. I'm Oliver with USAID's Water Team, and today I'll be asking questions on behalf of our online audience. So we currently have two questions. First one directed at Jim from Susan Davis. Quick question on, she'd love to hear more how or whether USAID is thinking about ensuring that its water and sanitation efforts are sustained over time. And then the second question, it could be broad, either Erin or Jim, from Jim Rigger. Are the geographical priorities in the current document high priority countries for 2018 only, or are these priorities for multiple years?
Well, let me start with Susan's question. I didn't plant that question, but let me just say I'm very thankful for it regarding sustainability. We're not doing anything that's not sustainable. That's got to be baked in to every single thing that we're doing. And we're already at work. We've already teased out some sustainability indicators, but we got to do better. We have to really be hammering that point home. I was struck on my trip to Kenya that we were in the northern part of the country, very arid. We had just opened a new borehole, opened a new facility, and part of the governance structure of this is the local governance committee. And we had a ceremony, opened it up. People from the community were getting their water. We heard speeches, and we heard a speech from the local governance community. And their entire speech was, and this really struck me, it was, what are you going to do about the fence? Because camels can get in over the fence. What are you going to do about, a litany of things? And my response to them was, you tell us. You're the ones. This is your water. We've gotten you this far, but you are going to have to prove it's sustainable. The days of us being able to, or of recipients to say, our pipes are no good, our pumps are no good, we're waiting for the next donor to come in and buy the next round. Those days are over. So it's up to us to build in that sustainability, but we have to realize that this is a matter of the development of the resilience of the communities that are benefiting as well.
Yeah, and the second question about the countries.
Oliver, any more questions from you?
No, there
Okay.
was.
Great.
There was a second question I don't think I answered. So.
Yeah, that was on the selection of the priority countries and whether or not this was yes, those countries are designated for FY18, and it's an annual designation, but I think the general hope is that that we stick with these for quite some time, and that I think that the normal planning horizon is about 5 years. I'm looking at my AID colleagues, and so our hope is that these are going to be long-term priorities again for the Senator Paul Simon Water for the World Act.
Good morning, Eric Viala from Winrock. I'm the director of the Sustainable Water Partnership, which is funded by USAID. I think if we look right now at the two draft appropriation bills from both House and Senate, we see that we have the same appropriation for WASH, $400 million, and it's a credit to all of us that it's still there. My concern is that the other three objectives are not addressed anywhere. And I'm wondering, what should we do to get there, to make sure that there is appropriation to take care of water resource management, take care of transboundary conflicts. And I think when we look at sustainability, Jim, I'm going to respectfully challenge what you're saying about sustainability, because I've also traveled all over Africa. I've seen too many water systems that fail. I agree with you that we need to make people accountable, make communities accountable, and we need to create markets. Because when we say market-based solutions, if there are no markets, if there are no customers, if there are no livelihoods to pay for water, then we can do whatever we want, it's going to fail. So we need to work a bit more holistically and also address issues around water pollution and water depletion, because we can build as many water systems as we want. If the resource fails, then the system will also fail. So I think that having that appropriation for WASH is a fantastic success, and we should all take credit for that. Now we need appropriations for the other dimensions of water. And the last thing I want to say is that we know that there is a big food crisis coming anytime very soon, and donors in general are doing very little on agricultural water management, and at the end of the day, it's 70% of the water on Earth that's used for that. And I think we really, really need to do something about that, and really need to lobby very hard and look beyond just WASH. WASH is only the first step in the development scale. Thank you.
Let me just say, you're not challenging me at all. I couldn't agree more, and that's why we need to think about outside the box in terms of the indicators on sustainability. It's not as simple as it might sound. We really do need to take the things that you mentioned into consideration, and we've convened our own group to start to think through those. So I hope that's something that we can develop a little bit more in the breakout sessions. So thank you, Eric.
Yeah, and Eric, maybe just to add, I mean, Jim and I have had a number of conversations now, I think, with Hill staffers, and I think overall they're very pleased with the strategy. They're pleased with the broad approach, the broad integrated approach to the strategy. So I'm not sure that I share your impression that we're not being supported to do that other kind of work.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that we need to lobby harder so it's written black and white in the appropriation bill. And there is a budget for that, just like there is for WASH.
We can talk about it offline. I actually think it is. I think we're okay.
Okay.
We can always do with more.
I think we'll just take one more question and then move on to the interagency panel. Last takers? Okay. Well, we'll have another chance for Q&A after the interagency panel. So thank you, Jim and Erin, for those opening remarks and taking those questions, starting the dialogue early in the day. And I'd like to ask the interagency panel folks to make their way to the stage now. And as they do that, I'd like to just sort of set the stage for them. I'd just like to remind you that during this interagency panel, you'll be able to hear from our U.S. government interagency representatives their perspectives on how do we build a water-secure world, and really through the lens of their organizations, their missions, and mandates. The themes that they'll touch on during the panel today will include learning a little bit about what's new in the global water strategy, a bit about how foreign assistance investment advance water and sanitation access rates and build and support local capacity. You'll hear a little bit about increased resource mobilization and private sector participation, how investments in water impact our ability to respond to emerging health threats, how water is critical to our natural assets and agricultural productive uses, and a bit about the role of science, technology, and big data. So now I'd just like to quickly introduce the members of our panel. Our moderator, Mary Renwick, who's in the middle. Mary is the chief of party for the USAID's Water Communications and Knowledge Management contract. For the past 25 years, she's worked on a wide range of water-related poverty, sustainability, and resilience challenges in over 20 countries. Mary is joined by Micah Rosenbaum, who is a policy and planning coordinator for the USDA Foreign Agriculture Services Office of Capacity Building and Development. His portfolio includes capacity building work on global food security, health security, and water issues. Captain Rick Gelting is a U.S. Public Health Services officer who works for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention on WASH. Rick has done research and provides technical assistance on issues related to the sustainability and impact of WASH interventions. And also, in 2013, he was the Federal Engineer of the Year. Meryl Bropay is the Deputy Vice President for the Office of Investment Policy at OPIC. Did I get it sort of? Burpo, okay. I knew that was going to be a challenge for me. She returned to OPIC in 2015 after many years working for private companies in the energy and water sectors. She spent 8 years with OPIC earlier in her career. Jeff Goldberg is the acting director of USAID's Water Office, and he manages agency efforts to align requirements with the Water for the World Act and serves as USAID Washington's technical lead on water and sanitation finance. Clay Stenger is a Foreign Service officer, also on State Department's water team along with Erin. He's worked for State for 20 years and most recently served as the consul in Lyon, France. This must have been a tough tour of duty for you, Clay. And transition director in Baghdad during the U.S. military departure in 2011. Catherine Maselli is a senior environmental engineer at the Export-Import Bank of the United States. At Exim, she promotes environmental and social responsibility in finance. She has 20 years of private sector civil and environmental consulting experience. John Bolton is the Associate Program Director of Water Resources for the NASA Applied Sciences Program. His research focuses on the application of satellite-based remote sensing and land surface hydrological modeling for improved ecological and water resources management. Must be a very complex job. I could barely get through that summary, so kudos to you. With that, I'll turn it over to Mary to guide the panel discussion.
Thank you, Portia. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So happy to have folks online as well. Isn't this an amazing space? It's so light and bright and beautiful. What you may or may not know is that the ceiling here is actually a dove that goes across the whole top of the building, connecting in with peace. And I love symbolism. And the symbolism of the dove, as you know, is hope and peace and promise. So I think it's a very fitting place to come together to talk about collaboration on the new U.S. Global Water Strategy, focusing on a water-secure world. This is a historic strategy, as you all know, or maybe you didn't know that coming in today, but taking the whole of government approach. And so on the panel here, we have representatives from various government agencies. And as Erin mentioned, not all the government agencies who have been involved in the strategy are here on this panel today, but they're in the room and you'll have a chance to meet with them over the informational lunch. I'm going to ask a few questions to get us started, and then we'll take questions from the audience and from those who are live streaming. So Clay, let's begin with you.
All right. I like this.
So you have been instrumental in putting together the new strategy in terms of coordinating role and so forth.
Right.
What's new? What's different? Tell us about some of the opportunities and challenges that you see.
Okay. Well, I wasn't around in 2005 when the Water for the Poor Act said we had to do the global water strategy. But I was for this one, and I think a big difference is the fact that you guys are all in the room today. And if you remember on October 28th in 2016, how we all brought you in for the listening session to get some input. We first started with the Interagency Water Working Group, right, where we kind of met it out and figured out what were going to be our themes and what were going to be things that are important. But we got to check with the implementers as well, right? And so that's where we got your input, and then we started to go to work. I didn't really draft it. I just kind of yelled at people and tried to get everybody in the room at that really came to the people who know, who have been in the water sphere for a long time. So it was all about coordination in reality. So here we are today. So the reason that this is an important thing that we're doing today is because we got it signed, we got it cleared, we got it through the White House, we got budget, and now we need to figure out how do we implement this, right? Because it's, as Erin and as Jim have said, you got to worry about sustainability. We got to actually implement it. We don't want it just sit on a shelf. It really is, how do we coordinate and implement this in country? And that's where we all need to have a say on how we do that, right? So please today, since I know we're talking about countries and we're going to be discussing how we develop a country strategy in our priority countries, please share your vision, share what you think is working, what's not working, because that's important, right? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Clay. That's a great way to get us out of the gate. So talking about specific actions, I'm going to turn next to you, Jeff. USAID's agency plan highlights specific development results that contribute to the vision of the global water strategy. Can you describe some of the areas where USAID will focus its efforts on over the next 5 years to move towards achieving the goal of the strategy?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Mary. I guess before I start talking, just wanted to acknowledge everybody in the room, thank Jim and Erin for their opening remarks, and all our interagency colleagues, my USAID colleagues as well. This really was a journey to get to this point, so it's really gratifying to sit here and, like Clay was just mentioning, be transitioning to talking about actual implementation and moving forward. So Jim did a great job laying out our agency-specific plan, but just want to take the opportunity to reiterate, because I think that there are some key differences in this agency plan that mark a little bit of a point of departure from our previous strategic framework. So for those who have looked through our agency plan in detail, you'll see that there are 4 development results that we will be programming around to contribute to the overall vision of the global water strategy. So I won't go quite in order because I think it's important to just note that our core work on water and sanitation will continue, so drinking water and sanitation, but even within that, there's a key difference. We've separated those out as 2 distinct development results unto themselves, and I think that that's an important thing to acknowledge. Like we talked about in the opening, progress on sanitation and hygiene has really lagged behind, and the specific set of programming and interventions that go into that area are quite distinct than drinking water supply. So we felt that it was really important to elevate that as a development result in its own right. So that's a big shift that I think is just, I'm personally quite excited about. And I think really allows us, as we look at our drinking water and sanitation interventions, to be quite nuanced in context specific about what it will take to go from basic access to these higher levels of service that we're all aspiring to. Beyond our drinking water and sanitation interventions, the core lens of sustainability, I'm really glad that Susan asked that question in the beginning, will really be infiltrating all that we're doing, and I think that that's why we've specifically called out separate development results in two very new areas for us. So that's sector governance and finance, which is in the overarching global water strategy as well, and then water resources management. So if we're not focusing on finance and governance and the overall system that we're programming in, we have a very low likelihood of sustainability. And so I think that many of you have heard that our administrator is focusing on the journey to self-reliance and how we work ourselves out of a job. So that governance and finance development result is really critical, kind of an underpinning factor of how we'll be looking at our programming in the sector. And then in line with what Erin mentioned, water resources management, we are seeing in many of the contexts in which we work that there's cyclical droughts, floods, increasing in their intensity and regularity, and not only for our drinking water interventions, but just writ large, that it's important for us to be focusing on water resources management, and that's a key difference from our last strategic framework. So I think that's, for me, what I'm really quite excited about.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. So a little crib sheet for some of you in the audience who may not know the global water strategy in and out. There's a lot to take in. If you go to page 12, I just want to direct you, there are by strategic objective and modes of engagement. It shows where all the different agencies hope to work and contribute to. So that might help you in questions or to understand a bit about the strategy. As Jeff touched upon, the strategic approach to achieving the objectives of the global water strategy involve a range of modalities, from technical assistance, diplomatic engagement, investing in sustainable infrastructure and services, promoting science, technology, and innovation, and mobilizing resources. And so I'd like to start there talking about resource mobilization, Catherine. Catherine is with the Export-Import Bank of the U.S. Could you talk a little bit about how EXIM hopes to expand the global the global water strategy resource mobilization by private sector engagement? And if you could, many might not know about your agency, if you could briefly describe a bit about what it does and how it will be contributing to the global water strategy.
Thank you very much. Again, I am Catherine Maselli with the Export-Import Bank of the United States, here to support the global water strategy in the portion that addresses finance. So a little bit about EXIM. We are reactive. We are the official export credit agency of the United States. Our mission is to support U.S. jobs through financing exports of U.S. goods and services. So where we have done a lot of work in the water sector as well as other sectors, specifically in support of the global water strategy, there is a sectoral understanding which allows the U.S. Export-Import Bank to offer extended terms. So where a U.S. company has, maybe they do a water services related activity, and there's a foreign government, sovereign or otherwise commercial, that's interested in purchasing that, then U.S. EXIM can finance that. Part of what EXIM does is due diligence on who we will engage in a loan with. So that offers the U.S. private sector water entity a little bit more comfort in that when they do this big sale, the buyer will have the ability to pay. So that gives the U.S. company a little bit more comfort there. So that's how, in one way, we can support. Specifics with respect to financing, we can offer 18-year tenor, we can finance interest over construction, 30% local cost, as well as working capital. So those are some little details, all available on Exim. And thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Catherine. So moving along on the finance topic, Meryl, could you talk a little bit about OPIC's work? Because you said OPIC comes in after the export-import bank has come in. And before you begin, if you could describe a little bit about OPIC and how it hopes to contribute to the global water strategy. Yeah.
So I'm Meryl Burpo, I'm with OPIC. And for those of you who aren't familiar with OPIC, we actually support private sector investment in many different sectors, but we have had a long history of supporting private sector investment in the water sector. I'm going to talk about a few things we've done specifically and some new projects we're looking forward to. But the way we do it is U.S. investors come to us and they tell us we need either a direct loan, a loan guarantee, or political risk insurance, and we also support funds that invest overseas in small and medium enterprises, micro enterprises. Some are very water specific, some are broader in category but touch upon the water sector. So I want to talk very quickly about a couple of things we've done. I'd love to go into details with you later separately, but just to touch on them, we've done the first private sector commercial desalination plant in Algeria that serves over 300,000 families. We've built a 200-mile pipeline in Jordan where families were only getting clean water once a week until we did that. That is bringing clean water into Amman. We've worked on financing for small agricultural entities to buy the equipment they need to do some, water efficient irrigation. And we've invested in a number of funds, including one where we're working with waterequity.org, which is a subsidiary of water.org, where we are helping them with funding for microenterprise investments that they will do in the water sector. I think it's interesting to note that even when we don't know we're working with water, we are sometimes. I just came back from South Africa where I was looking at the IHS Housing Fund, an entity that's put in about 18,000 rental and owned housing units in South Africa. And they are currently working on affordable housing, including low-income subsidized housing in partnership with the government, where they have made a decision to put in energy efficient and water efficient equipment into each of the apartments, even those that are very low income, and found that they can do so economically. And so they are putting in things like water efficient taps, low flush toilets into those homes, which will really help South Africa, I think, on their water usage. And finally, just want to mention, even when we're doing something like a shipping and logistics project, we were looking at one in Tanzania that realized the community needed better access to water and put a tap right outside their gate where all of the people in the community, generally women and girls, are coming every evening to get their clean water for their evening meal, and they just make it available to them for free. And this is a very popular, as you can imagine, asset. And finally, I just want to mention our 2X program, our new 2X program, where we are focused very much on women. And as you are aware, women are often the water carriers. They're very, reliant on having clean water to improve their lives. So our new 2X initiative is going to make available about $350 million worldwide, which will then mobilize additional capital up to about $1 billion, where we're really going to be working on all sorts of projects, but obviously women's projects in the water sector will be key.
Great. Thank you, Meryl. That's really exciting work. Jeff, just a quick question for you. Could you talk a little bit about the Development Credit Authority and how it will work? What other gaps that it fills and opportunities?
Yeah.
And before you begin, I just want to ask Miriam here if we can get this back panel dropped behind us, because it's getting a bit hot up here and I see people squinting in the front. So maybe we can Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, happy to quickly mention Development Credit Authority, or DCA. So Catherine and Meryl mentioned some really exciting opportunities in terms of financing and how to get the US private sector involved, but just looking across all the financial tools that are in our toolbox that can be brought to bear on that strategic objective on governance and finance, USAID has a really unique authority called the Development Credit Authority that is a partial risk guarantee that's really used to de-risk different sector investments and attract local private capital. So I just wanted to mention it to note that we have tools in our toolbox that can both involve the US private sector, but also get local currency lending going. So I think that's a really nice distinguishing feature of DCA. And it's been used with great success in the water sector, particularly in India in the 2000s, and more recently, as Jim mentioned, in Kenya, leveraging commercial financing to lend to water service providers. So what I'm particularly excited about in terms of the governance and finance SO is that that's going to allow us the opportunity to provide technical assistance, like you mentioned, on really trying to tee up credit-worthy service providers. And by credit-worthy service providers, I mean those that are collecting cost-reflective tariffs and are seen as attractive investments by the private sector. And so with that type of TA, I think we'll be able to use the DCA authority more and hopefully be able to attract more private capital into the sector.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So as you look at the modes of engagement, one is, and we've talked a little bit about finance. Now I want to talk a little bit more about technical assistance and promoting science, technology, and innovation. My next question is for you, John, with NASA. Can you tell us a bit about NASA's work with big data and Surveyor in particular? And many in the audience may not know much about NASA except for their space program. So if you could briefly describe a little bit about the agency and how you hope to contribute to the global water strategy.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. Well, first I'd like to say that NASA is thrilled to be participating in the global water strategy. One reason is that it's very much in line with the strategic goals of NASA's Applied Sciences program, which is really to bring data and tools and free access to data to partners around the world. So many people may not be aware, but NASA has nearly 20 satellites that are devoted to monitoring different components of the water cycle. And the phrase I like to use these days is, you can't manage what you can't monitor. And as Jim and Erin mentioned this morning, that the key to the strategy is water security and water access. And to do that, you need to monitor and characterize different components of the water. So that's really in line with what NASA is doing. So within NASA's Applied Sciences program, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars for the development and providing access to these tools and data, namely the NASA's Surveyor program, which it's a joint capacity building program with USAID. And the purpose of that program is to engage stakeholders around the world, and there's four Surveyor hubs, and to encourage this data access for providing solutions, namely for water security, agricultural security around the world. So as far as data access, as you mentioned, Mary, one of the things is, how do you provide this data? How do you provide more than just data? How do you provide tools and solutions? And one thing that we're doing is working on cloud-based services, because when you have a cloud-based service, it allows stakeholders and people who really need these solutions to access the data. And as we know that a lot of the areas that have water insecure issues, they have a lot of data sparse issues as well. So moving towards a cloud-based solution is really a great leap forward. And NASA has many missions planned in the next few years that are addressing issues of water monitoring, water characterization. So through embracing these technologies and working with the other partners on the global water strategy, I think it's a very exciting endeavor for us to continue promoting our free access of data.
Great, great. Thank you very much, John. Really exciting work. My next question is for Micah Rosenblum, USDA. Water is an essential resource for food, agriculture, and forest systems. Forest systems play a particularly critical role for both water availability and water quality. How will USDA leverage its expertise and programs to implement the global water strategy? And like the other panelists, if you could just explain a little bit about the USDA, particularly the Foreign Agricultural Service, and its contributions to the global water strategy, that'd be great.
All right. Is this on? Yes. Okay, thanks. Thanks for that good question, and totally agree with your statements about the importance of water to agriculture and to forestry. And I also want to just thank you, Susan, and Portia, and Erin, and Jim, and all of you for just coming together for this event. Very excited to be part of the strategy and to be here today. First, let me just say the U.S. Department of Agriculture is a very large, complex organization. We have 100,000 employees, more or less, 29 offices and agencies, and we've got locations, operations going on at about 4,500 different locations around the U.S. and the world. So within that, we're almost like our own microcosm when we think about what's going on or what's mapped out in the global water strategy. Overall, we provide leadership and expertise and programs and tools for U.S. agriculture, for forestry, and for other users of water to help bring U.S. high-quality products around the world. And there is no doubt, I think one of the earlier comments even highlighted it as well, or one of the earlier questions. I mean, there's no doubt that water is absolutely fundamental to all of our work, really. I can't overstate the importance of water, and fortunately, we have many of our offices and agencies directly engaged in implementing the water strategy. So we're going to be bringing a lot. We're looking forward to it. We're going to be bringing a lot to the partnerships. We have a wide range of partnerships. We work with the private sector. We work with state, local, tribal governments here in the United States. We engage foreign governments in our work, multilateral, non-government organizations, and others. So there's a just very diverse range of partners and collaborations that we're already engaged in, and we look forward to forging new partnerships where that's appropriate. Here today, there's several USDA colleagues who are joining me, so for these interactive sessions that are going to happen later in the day, I really want to encourage everybody to seek us out and check us out and find out what we're doing. If I still can take a few minutes here, I do have a few more specific notes about some things that we're delivering, if this is a good time for that. But in a nutshell, what you'll see in the strategy when you look at USDA's two-page implementation plan, which, by the way, summarizes at a very high level what we're intending to contribute. But we're going to be aligning our international food assistance programs and our international capacity building programs. We've got environmental market programs that we're looking forward to align with the strategy. We've got a lot of basic and applied research going on with respect to all kinds of aspects of water in agriculture and forestry. We've got data and information that we already share, and we're going to continue to share to help really users around the world, stakeholders around the world, our colleague from NASA just pointed out, having that data and information is just critical for being able to make sound decisions, sound business decisions, sound policy decisions that are science-based. And we want to promote science-based policies and regulations that expand U.S. markets and trade. That's some of our bottom line objectives. And then for all of the other reasons I think that folks pointed out about the importance of the strategy to our foreign policy and international development work, we're very keen to contribute our expertise and our tools and where we can align our programs. And maybe there will be some more specific questions that arise here, and I'm happy to go into some more details, specifically about the importance, for example, of forests. When we think about water, very important to think about the source of water, where water is coming from. We have colleagues from our U.S. Forest Service here today that can get into details about their expertise in evaluating watersheds and in providing expertise to help restore watersheds and protect them. And we've got, I mentioned our food assistance programs, our McGovern-Dole International Food for Education and Child Nutrition Program. Those activities include WASH components. So we're helping, school-based water projects with water access and improved latrine construction, hygiene education. Our Food for Progress program also has a couple of activities that are explicitly working on water. We brought up Kenya before. One of the activities we have there is has already constructed about 200 water access points and helped livestock producers reduce their time to water. In Jordan, we had assistance to government of Jordan to develop a very large dam, 1.9 million cubic meters of water in the Carrick region. So I guess let me just leave it at that for the moment to kind of give folks a flavor of the scope that we have within the department. And again, that we're here to engage with you and to explore this. And I just want to thank all my partners and colleagues back at USDA. It's been a real journey for me personally to help coordinate our input to the strategy.
They're watching right now, Mike.
Yeah, they're watching right now. Again, I really want to give credit where it's due. There's a lot of folks working across the department, and I don't know that a 5-minute blurb here can totally do it justice, but we are here and we're ready to work with you. So let me leave it at that. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you. Thank you for describing a lot of the work that USAID is doing. It's
USDA.
USDA, sorry. Sorry.
Just for clarification, that was the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, USDA, sorry.
Well, you called her Susan, too.
Yeah.
Touche.
That's okay. I grew up in a family with 6 kids, and my dad was always mixing our names up, so I don't flinch about that. So we're moving on to the CDC. So my next question is to Captain Rick Gelding. A central focus of the CDC's work is on emerging global health threats. What do you see as the biggest emerging global health threat that WASH can help mitigate? And also congratulations on being the 2013 Engineer of the Year, U.S. Engineer of the Year, yes. Yeah. And for some people know a bit about the CDC, but perhaps you could just explain just a little bit about it and how it hopes to contribute to the global water strategy.
Sure. Well, thanks again, everybody, for coming. Hopefully you can see us now through the glare. We were kind of backlit there for a little while. At least we're on the side of angels. So you might be wondering, some of you, why CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is up here talking about a global water strategy. And I'm going to try to convince you why we are involved and why we should be involved. But just to first start out with a brief description, CDC is the public health agency for the United States, but we also do significant global work. We're a technical and scientific agency, and basically, some of our roles include, we help to provide the evidence base to identify the most effective interventions, in this case, WASH interventions. We do that through applied research and monitoring and evaluation. As John said, monitoring and measuring is critical. We need to monitor and evaluate things so we know what is sustainable and what works. And then we also provide guidance, technical assistance to partners to help scale up those effective interventions, help make partner interventions more efficient, more effective, and hopefully more sustainable. We work with a lot of global partners, WHO, UNICEF, other USG agencies, other partners like academia to provide guidance documents and implement training for partners like Ministries of Health and Ministries of Water. We also do a lot of response activities to natural disasters and waterborne disease outbreaks, and that is aligned with water security and also the larger global health security agenda, which is designed to prepare, detect, and respond to global health threats. Within outbreaks, but also in general, we also try to build local capacity to prepare and respond to those type of events. So in terms of the question about emerging global health threats and what would be one, or I think you said the primary one or something that WASH could help mitigate, I think my short answer is most, if not all. Now that sounds pretty bold, but let me try to convince you. WASH is one of the foundations of public health. The beginnings of public health were intimately intertwined with WASH. Public health was somewhat, the genesis of public health really came together because of cholera in cities in Europe. John Snow famously identifying water as where the cholera was coming from. So, that's just a sort of a general argument that WASH is integral to public health, and therefore we need to look at WASH in terms of all emerging diseases. Just some examples of recently emerging or re-emerging disease. I already mentioned cholera. We're having more and more cholera large outbreaks. Obviously, WASH is closely related to that. It has been from the beginning. I don't need to explain that one. But if we look at some of the other recent outbreaks, when Ebola first started, the initial sort of message that we received was this is not an environmentally transmitted disease. So therefore, there's not probably going to be a big role for WASH. Within days of that message, we were getting questions about the survivability of Ebola virus in wastewater. Unfortunately, there was no research on that because it's so dangerous to work with. And also, obviously, hand washing is critical to prevention. Many healthcare workers tragically died during the Ebola outbreak, as you know, because of a lack of infection prevention and control. Well, you can't, or IPC, you can't do IPC without WASH. It's dependent on WASH facilities and services. So WASH in healthcare facilities is another issue that's starting to get a lot of attention now, partly because of these large outbreaks. So WASH in healthcare facilities is obviously critical to treating all diseases, that people come to the clinic protecting the healthcare workers, protecting the staff, the patients, and even visitors. And I'll just close out with one more. WHO recently came out with a list of top health threats, and one of them was called Disease X, an unknown health threat, something that we don't even know about or is emerging. If we don't know what it is, then obviously it's going to be uncertain how we're going to deal with it. But if it's an unknown disease, it could be waterborne. Even if it's not, we still need WASH services and facilities so that people and healthcare workers can wash their hands, contain medical waste, things like that. So I think that hopefully I've made the case for my bold statement and at least convinced you a little bit that that WASH is essential across the spectrum of emerging or re-emerging health threats. And thank you again for coming, and thanks to everybody who participated in creating the strategy. It was a great experience, and I look forward to we look forward at CDC to continuing to work on implementing it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Rick. Yeah, fascinating. Before we open it up for audience questions, I'd like to put the last question to you, Clay. Could you
Ready.
talk?
Ready, Susan Mary?
Mary Sue. Could you please talk a little bit about the Department of State's water diplomacy program?
Yeah. You know where the State Department is located. It's right up the street. We are the lead on foreign affairs, right, diplomatic affairs. And that's our home office, right? And so we have embassies and consulates and other types of posts around the world and most countries. So I don't know if you know how the State Department's organized, but we have regional bureaus and functional bureaus. I work in OES, Oceans and Environmental and Scientific Affairs, right? There are regional bureaus like AF, Africa, and then that's broken down further into like East Africa, Central Africa, blah, blah, blah. So we put out our environmental concerns or policy through our bureaus, and we try to coordinate. Since environmental affairs are so important, we also have regional environmental officers posted at 12 posts around the world to further coordinate our environment policy. And then at post, it's econ officers or our environmental officers. So we have this great network, right? We are all about people. We don't necessarily have the money, right, to do foreign assistance and development assistance, right? But we have people. So our strength is in coordination. When Erin and the powers that be formed the interagency water working group, the idea was to coordinate the response from all the interagencies. And I'll give you an idea. You know, in our State Department plan, if you see it in the Global Water Strategy, the first thing is support engagement of U.S. on international water issues. Well, one of the ways we do that is through the IWIG as well as through our U.S. Water Partnership. So I know Chuck's in the room, right? And Chuck is at the U.S. Water Partnership, 120 partners, right? That's right, with like Coca-Cola and Nat Geo, lots of stuff going on. We even second a foreign service officer like myself there, Chris. Put your hand up there, buddy. And so we are coordinating a lot of our program. And how do we get people engaged on this stuff? Well, through them, through the U.S. Water Partnership, and from requests from the field, we are sending water experts out to the priority countries. And we are looking at Liberia, Nigeria, Indonesia, Haiti. So all these things we are coordinating as we speak. We don't have a lot of money, but we have people in place to plan these programs. Now, I'll give you a good example of how we kind of coordinate stuff. Iraq is not a priority country, but it's an important country to the United States. So we have a couple of issues that we're looking at. One is drought in the south of Iraq, and one is, you know, the Tigris-Euphrates Basin. So who do we have in the room who's helping us work with that? Well, I pinged Corey from the Air Force. Where are you, Corey? There he is. So because we need to know what do we see weather coming up for the next 6 months to a year to kind of measure inflows and coming down the Tigris and the Euphrates, right? Because we need to know where the water is. Where's Army Corps? Will? We got the Army Corps over there who, sorry, brother. They are working on regrouting the Mosul Dam, right? So that we can be assured that it's not going to create a flood. We got AID who puts in these horns in the event that there is a break in the dam and then it starts flood, so we can warn people. We're using Micah now because we're planning a trip to Basra, to southern Iraq, because of the salinity in the groundwater, and the people who are doing their agriculture, they asked us, could we do something, could show them with certain farming techniques where there's a lot of salinity. So it kind of coordinates all this stuff. I do want to plug again what Erin said about the World Water Day next Thursday, right, Wednesday? Thursday morning. We are doing, one of the big things that the administration is talking about is making business for America, increasing exports. So that's why we're focusing on business, right, on World Water Day. And it's kind of a smaller program. It's just the morning because we realize a lot of people are going to be at the World Water Forum, right, which is also next week, right? But we still want to recognize these things. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the mitigating tensions in basins. This is something that we're working on too. So we have the people, so what are we concerned with? We're Tigris-Euphrates, we're concerned with the Mekong. in our bureau, we have fellows, science fellows, we have foreign service officers, we have civil servants who have been around a long time. So we can work on the Mekong like Jen is working on. We can work on Afghanistan, Pakistan, like Ali's working on. So we can coordinate this. Erin may be traveling out to the Nile Basin at some point. So these are the things that we are working on a diplomatic engagement. And we ping our interagency partners all the time, like Sasha from EPA, right? This is how we do our business, and this is why we want your input, right? So please give it to us so we can better do our job.
Great. Thank you very much, Clay. So let's open it up now. Who would like to ask a question? Let's take a few questions from the audience and then the online audience. You have a question? The mic's coming over so that our online folks can hear.
You would catch it.
Thank you very much for all those amazing remarks. John Sauer from PSI. I'm struck still by how many of the examples, though, are inputs. Like, a borehole here, a big system, water treatment system there. What are we doing around the systems change, or even more specifically, the market systems change that we need to see happen? How are you coordinating around, systems change in particular geographies versus one particular input or one particular output? I think we need to think of outcomes in the next version of the water strategy versus these outputs or these inputs. And I'm just trying to, when we come back to talk in 2020, are we going to hear more examples of, hey, we changed, this particular system, so now it's a robust market in, Ghana, or a robust market in Kenya, a robust market in Liberia?
Yeah, I'll let Jeff take that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it comes back to our priority country selection criteria. So Jim mentioned in his opening remarks that we're looking at both need and opportunity. And so on the opportunity side, we're really looking at countries that have the reform efforts in place and, as Jim's put it, skin in the game, that they're putting their public resources towards this and that they're a partner over the long term, so that it's not just that we're going in on a projectized basis in working on access. So I think that looking at that opportunity criteria, and then really, I can't overstate enough the importance of having an entire SO on governance, finance, and institutions. It's a big, big change in terms of how we're looking at this type of work. So, that spans the international space and how we partner with other donors and the private sector. So like Clay was mentioning about the event next week, but then also in country, how we're partnering with our host country governments, the domestic private sector, civil society. All of that will be infiltrating kind of the lens that we look at our programming over the next 5 years, and that's a really, really big shift for us. So really looking forward to engaging on that in the specific breakout session on sector governance and finance, because I think that that's really where, from a cross-cutting perspective, that infiltrates all of the SOs and everything that we need to be looking at. So it is on an outcome basis and not just number of people reached and those types of output-based measures.
Great. Another question? Right behind you, Patricia.
Hi. Hello. Ann Simmons-Benton, Arizona State University. We've heard about private sector, NGOs, but if we're trying to mobilize other countries, what about the roles of universities in the U.S.? I know I've heard bits and pieces of it through your speeches, but how do we mobilize U.S. universities to mobilize other scientists in other countries?
Sure, I can happy to address that one. U.S. universities are one of our major partners in not only our domestic work, but certainly in our international programs as well. We've been trying to build partnerships through our exchange programs, through our fellowships and scientific exchange programs. Several of those topics address water either directly or indirectly. when we've been implementing programs in partnership with the USAID or Department of State and others. Those have been also opportunities for us to do in-reach through our National Institute of Food and Agriculture, through some of the expert and water programs that they have available. That's been a nice tool for us to identify and engage U.S. universities in our work. And I think, I mean, I'm sure there are many other examples, but those are just a few, and totally agree with you that building those kinds of relationships between faculty and researchers that are at the university systems, and introducing them, building relationships with their counterparts overseas. And we have many examples of where that has proven to be quite durable. This issue of sustainability arose earlier, and certainly those relationships have proven durable, at least, and beneficial. And we look forward to continuing to do that as we go forward. So that's at least my part of the answer.
I'll add to build off of that, Micah. So NASA, in October of 2017, they launched through the GEO program 32 new projects that a lot of them are led by university-based PIs. And that many of those fall within the goals of the global water strategy, which is pushing the state of the art, building tools, building solutions that cover a lot of the regions that are focused on with the global water strategy. So academia and the private sector is a huge part of what NASA's Applied Sciences program does, working with them. So really appreciate the question.
Great. Oh, go ahead.
I can just make one other quick plug. So under our agency-specific plan, we've committed to putting together a research agenda. So I think that's a really critical piece for AID as well, that we're a foreign assistance agency and we're investing in evidence-based solutions, but at the same time, there are still some unanswered questions in the sector about what are the most effective modalities for delivering WASH services, for working on sector governance, finance, and institutions. And so what we're going to be doing over the next 5 years is putting together a comprehensive research agenda and investing in cutting-edge research with our priority countries to help inform the next generation of programming as well. So we do see a key role for U.S. universities in that process as well.
Great. We'll take one more question here, and then I think we'll turn it over to live stream. I see Oliver tweeting in the back, I think.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Melnick, and I work with USAID in the Asia Bureau. I'm the Environmental Security and Resilience Team Leader. And congratulations to all the organizers. This is fabulous. I was wondering, and this is a question to anyone on the panel, what are your thoughts on the pollution aspects of the water resource management related to agricultural waste, industrial waste? Aquatic systems have the same plastic bag and plastic bottle issues as marine ecosystems, and especially with EXIM and OPIC, what are the opportunities for exporting U.S. technologies, and then for some of the other agencies, what do you see as perhaps possible actions as we move into the roundtable discussions on the pollution issue? Thank you.
Okay, Meryl.
So I think you raise a really good question. One of the most important things we can do is take that industrial wastewater or the agricultural wastewater, treat it, and turn it back into water that can be reused, that's clean and able to be recycled, for example, through industrial plants. There are some very good U.S. technologies. Some of them are efficient in energy consumption, which is one of the biggest issues with technologies for cleaning water, for doing desalination, industrial wastewater. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity actually for us to support U.S. technologies in going overseas to take care of that, because as we recycle, we dramatically reduce the consumption of new resources.
Thank you. US EXIM again, applies sectoral extended terms in the water sector. That includes treatment for water distribution, as well as, depending on the situation, wastewater industrial discharge. Overall, resource recovery is an important aspect of all OECD financing, and non-specific to the water sector, but kind of overall. There's also greater awareness in the supply chain, upstream and downstream. So, every effort is continually attempted to be achieved, and there's a lot of work to do. So that should mean a lot of jobs. So let's get to work.
In support of that, the World Water Day on Thursday morning, since we're talking about, I know I keep saying this, but this is important. We're supporting investment in international water. And we are the State Department has compiled all these things from the interagencies, and we put together this brochure. This is it without it actually being put together. So we just cleared it. You know how that can go. So this will be available on the Thursday. Hopefully we'll have it ready before that and we can send it out. But it gives hints on how to do this because we want to increase exports because we recognize exactly what you say.
Yeah, is this on? Okay, yeah, and thanks, Mary. You mentioned agriculture there as well. And I guess I will just highlight that our science and research agencies are very much focused on the issue of water quality. I mentioned in my earlier comment there about how, in particular, our U.S. Forest Service colleagues are focused on watershed evaluation and restoration, and that has a real big impact just right up at the source to kind of protect water sources for downstream users. And the gentleman sitting right next to you there is from directing our Office of Environment Markets and Programs. And I would encourage those who have some interest in that to seek out Chris here during this event. And he's got some innovative ideas and programs there as well that can help address this issue of water quality. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. So I think that Oliver, do you have a question?
Oh, we have one last question online from Rebecca. Rebecca would like to know, how will the water strategy plan on tackling sanitation issues regarding menstrual health?
Sure, so that's a great question. We haven't talked about gender yet, too. So I think just a major plug, and you'll see this in the strategy, that gender cuts across everything that we're doing in the strategy. So every single activity in foreign assistance investment that USAID will be making will be considering the specific needs of women and girls, and that includes menstrual hygiene management. We have some really great programming going on that, specifically in Nepal right now and in Ghana. So encourage folks to check out that programming. But just while we're on gender, I think just another important way that we're looking at this is both from the beneficiary side, but from an empowerment perspective too. So I think we're all very familiar with the statistics on the distance that women and girls have to walk to collect water and the opportunity costs associated with that from a productivity and educational perspective. But then on the empowerment side, another way that we're trying to look at it internally is how to cultivate the next generation of women leaders in the water sector. So from a higher educational perspective and creating job opportunities in the utility and service delivery sector, that's another area of emphasis that we'll really be looking at. On sanitation specifically, we're already doing some analysis through our Wallace program. Amanda Robertson's in the room. She manages that on looking at a sanitation academy in sub-Saharan Africa, and then in conversations with the Gates Foundation about how to develop curriculum around creating the next generation of sanitation professionals. And gender is absolutely critical to all that, and making sure that we're attracting high caliber both female students and job opportunities for women in the sector is something that we'll absolutely be looking at as well.
Great, thank you for that excellent question. So I just want to thank all the panelists. This brings to a close this session. As you can see, they have a lot to talk about and are very open to discussing things, and you'll hopefully have a chance to interact with them throughout the day and through the informational lunch. Thank you all.
I just want to let folks know we're going to move into a coffee break, so we'll assemble back here at 11:15. Thank you. And you'll find coffee and continental breakfast at the rear of the room. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, welcome back from the coffee break. It seems like folks really had a chance to have an initial round of conversations about this morning's sessions. So now we'd like to make our way into the next session on understanding USG. Hi, everybody. If we could just make our way to our seats so we could get started with the next session, that would be great. Okay. Now that sounds a little bit better. Okay. All right, so we're going to get ready to launch into the next session around understanding USG coordination at the country level. I'm going to ask Jeff Goldberg and Agatha Sector from USAID to join the stage. While they're taking their places, you've heard a little bit about Jeff's background this morning, but I'll share with you a little bit about Agatha, and you'll get a sense of why she's really going to be a good person to join the conversation about what it means to have a field focus under the Global Water Strategy. So Agatha is a Foreign Service Officer and a WASH specialist. She's in the Africa Bureau at USAID and sits in the Sustainable Development Office. She's been with AID for nearly 8 years. She's served overseas in both USAID Tanzania and USAID Senegal. In addition, prior to joining USAID, Agatha worked on biodiversity conservation and economic development for the Jane Goodall Institute, the Nature Conservancy, and the UN. In addition, she has also worked in finance as a trader at the hedge fund Angelo Gordon and as a market analyst covering Latin America for a market research firm. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff and Agatha. He has also worked in finance as a trader at the hedge fund Angelo Gordon and as a market analyst covering Latin America for a market research firm. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff and Agatha.
Great, thanks, Portia. So I've been joking with Agatha, this is where we sing a duet together, but so welcome back, everybody. So we're going to transition now from thinking about the interagency nature of the Global Water Strategy. We had a really robust panel that showcased all the different technical contributions of the different agencies that participate in the IWIG process. But now we want to shift gears a little bit and talk about how we'll be implementing the Global Water Strategy at the country level. So really where the rubber meets the road. Just a quick note up front, this is not going to be a fully fledged panel, but more of just an interlude to make sure that you're all aware of key processes that we have in place at U.S. embassies and USAID missions abroad that really will inform and dovetail with the Global Water Strategy's implementation. I just felt it was really critical to make you guys aware of these strategic frameworks and how they influence our work. So, as we heard in the last panel, the IWIG is really the brains and the technical arm of the strategy from a Washington perspective. But in terms of how these contributions are going to be brought to bear, it's really, really important to note that the Global Water Strategy will be implemented from the field and not from Washington. And so that really came through very clearly in Jim's remarks. It's truly been a bottom-up process in terms of its development, but moving forward, that will continue to be the case. I think many of you are aware that state and aid have highly decentralized systems in place to coordinate our diplomatic efforts and our foreign assistance at the country level. And so in this session, we're going to do a few things. We're going to just briefly walk through those strategic processes at post that will guide and inform implementation of the GWS. We're going to engage in some question and answers between myself and Agatha. Agatha as you heard from her bio, is a seasoned Foreign Service officer who served in Senegal and Tanzania, managing WASH programming there, but also other high-level strategic processes like the Global Water Strategy through Feed the Future and Power Africa. So we'll be hearing a little bit from Agatha about how that's worked at the country level and how that may translate into how we approach implementation of the GWS. And then lastly, we want to hear from you guys. All of you have a wide array of different experiences implementing in the field and working with our field missions, and we want to hear from you about what's worked well in terms of coordination in the field and what we might consider in terms of how we move forward and work in our high priority countries. So with that, just a few background points. I think everybody's aware, but worth just stating again, that the Water for the World Act has a requirement that the aid administrator designates on the basis of need and opportunity high priority countries, and that aid develop high priority country plans that are currently appended to the Global Water Strategy. There are 13 high priority country and regions in total. I won't read all of them aloud, but they are on page 11 of the Global Water Strategy if anybody wants to take a quick look. So in terms of the processes that are in place at our posts, there's a couple things, and we'll just walk through it from the top down. So at the highest level, there's something called the Integrated Country Strategy, or the ICS. So that articulates U.S. priorities in a given country, and that spans diplomacy, national security, and foreign assistance. And so that is a document through which mission objectives and mission goals for a particular country is set, and it's set through an interagency process. So that's the Department of State, USAID, and the full interagency partakes in that, the development of that strategy. And so we really envision the interagency coordination taking place at that level. As you heard in the previous session, the Global Water Strategy is a whole-of-government strategy that spans diplomacy, foreign assistance, and technical expertise from our various science and technology agencies. And so the coordination we envision taking place at the level of the ICS. Jim mentioned that there are country teams at our posts that meet regularly, and that's the level at which that coordination will be taking place. With regard to foreign assistance specifically, USAID has something called the Country Development Cooperation Strategy. I think some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not be, but if you're not, it is the document that codifies our relationship with host country governments. So all of our development assistance is negotiated at a high level with our country partners, and that document lays out all of the development objectives that a USAID mission will be working on at the country level. So USAID mission directors lead the development, implementation, and review of CDCSs every 5 years, and they ensure that all USAID-supported activities investments that flow from that are aligned with the CDCS on the basis of our negotiation with the host country government. So just a couple things to note about that. We do host public consultations on CDCS processes, so when you guys are working in countries, there are outlets through which to participate in the development of a CDCS, and those are public documents too, so once they're finalized, those are online at the agency's website. So really, when you're looking at how to engage at the country level, everything that we're doing on water doesn't exist in a vacuum. It flows from that, and that's a really, really important point to note just in terms of how we engage at the country level. So just in terms of our vision moving forward, Jim mentioned in his remarks that the development of USAID high priority country plans was a bottom-up process. Throughout the spring and summer of 2017, we engaged with our mission technical counterparts and USAID mission directors to identify core themes that existed in our water and sanitation programming at the country level that aligned with the selection criteria of the Global Water Strategy and of the Water for the World Act, and also with the writing of the Global Water Strategy and the USAID agency plan. So this was a tricky dance to be balancing. We were both in the process of developing the strategy at a high level and our agency-specific plan, but then also engaging with our missions about the programming that they currently have in place in alignment with the CDCS, or importantly, those that are in the design phase moving forward. So we're really working across in a very dynamic way with missions that are at different points of what we call their program cycle, and trying to make sure that we've identified those core themes that they were working on and made sure that those were fully reflected in our high priority country plans. So as we move forward towards implementation of the strategy, the fact that we spent the better part of the last year engaging with our missions and embassies on the development of these country plans really positions us to be able to leverage those relationships that we developed and the processes that we started to do a couple things moving forward. So what we intend to do at a very high level is ensure that water-related coordination that's happening here in DC through the IWIG, that we develop processes that mirror that at the country level through the country teams and at the level of the ICS. So that really, it won't look the same on a country-by-country basis. Every mission that we work in, every embassy is dealing with a very different context. But from a macro perspective, what we're going to be trying to do is make sure that there's a platform for coordination in place at the country level that really mirrors the IWIG process. So USAID, state, CDC, all of the different agencies that we heard from this morning are coordinating together. And that'll do a couple things. So internally, we'll be able to have a full mapping of all the USG activities that are going on at the country level to make sure that we're fully coordinated and speaking with one voice internally. And then externally, that'll help us represent back to our host country government counterparts really with one voice. And I can't understate the importance of that. So that's something that we're going to be working on our side to make sure that we develop. From the USAID perspective, another thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be encouraging all of our missions to include water and sanitation in their respective CDCSs. This does happen on its own accord right now, but with the strategy and the elevation of water and sanitation through the Water for the World Act, we want to make sure that all of our missions, our high priority countries in particular, are elevating water and sanitation in their negotiations on the development package that we'll be offering to our host country government counterparts. And so that is really good for our donor-host country government relationship, but then also making sure that because CDCSs bubble up to the ICS process, that will help make sure that water and sanitation is duly considered in the ICS. There's a development portion of the ICS. So by making sure that we're elevating water and sanitation at the level of the CDCS, we're also ensuring that it bubbles up to that interagency country team level. So we're in the thick of developing all of this right now and looking at a lot of different modalities for how we'll take these high-level goals forward in terms of how we'll function at the country level. And Agatha, as you heard from her bio, has a lot of experience working at the country level, not only on water and sanitation programming, but through other high-level strategic frameworks that USAID has through Feed the Future and the Global Food Security Strategy and Power Africa. So rather than me continue to talk about these processes in kind of theoretical terms, we wanted to engage in a little bit of question and answer with Agatha, just to hear from her experience on how this has worked in processes like Feed the Future and Power Africa and what we might consider moving forward. So with that, Agatha, I just wanted to turn over to you and just ask how, in your experience at Post, coordination and collaboration tends to be implemented, both in water and sanitation, but these other strategic areas, what's worked well and what lessons might we want to be considering?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm very happy to be here to provide that mission perspective. And I'm very happy to see all of you here. We need your input for sure on how to implement the global water strategy. So I think I can speak to, at missions, I definitely want to reiterate the fact that every mission is different, the context is different, and so the management structure and how missions coordinate is going to be different depending on the leadership style and other factors of which agencies are present. In Senegal, it was considered a regional mission because we covered multiple countries. The embassy covered multiple countries. So we had representatives from TSA, from Treasury, there was an MCC compact in Senegal, so MCC had a presence, DOD obviously, USAID, state. So it was quite a large mission, and a lot of the coordination happened on these weekly country team meetings that was mentioned, where heads of agencies meet weekly to update the ambassador. It's led by the ambassador on what's going on in their respective agencies and their work. But at a more technical level, we had an economic working group that was multi-agency, MCC, state, aid, USDA, attended regularly to talk about energy, to talk about economic growth. Treasury often at times would be there. Because as we know, development is a whole system, and there are multiple factors that affect it. So it was very important to make sure that we were all talking to each other. We're all in the same building, but it's amazing how often those conversations don't happen unless there's a vehicle and a process for them to happen. So that kind of working group, I think, was key. In terms of Power Africa, I think what Power Africa did very well was really wholeheartedly embrace the whole of government approach. They had specific people liaising with all of the different agencies. Oftentimes, those people were actually seconded from the agency that they were going to be liaising with, so Department of Energy, MCC, Commerce, Trade. And it was really important for USAID to understand how those agencies work, to really be able to leverage and utilize their skills and expertise and the products and tools that they have. OPIC for sure was definitely a huge part of being able to leverage U.S. financing. And the other part of that was also to be able to feed to OPIC or other financing agencies the pipeline of projects. Because USAID is on the ground, states on the ground. We have people, we're talking with government, we're talking with private sector. So we're sort of the conduit and we're connecting all of those different groups together to achieve the results that we all want. So I think that was really important. I think the other thing too was leveraging the diplomatic side, which was very important, making sure that when there was an issue on the sort of development side that we could get the ambassador involved or high-level people at state to be discussing with their counterparts in government and making sure that we're all speaking with one voice. And some of these, the systemic changes that we need in energy or in water are very intractable sometimes. And so it really was helpful to have this whole of government approach, everybody speaking with one voice and having high-level engagement as well as at the technical level. I think for Feed the Future, what was done there was, that I think is important to mention, is that too was whole of government in the sense of working with USDA, working with some of the health aspects. And so one of the examples I can use there is they did an annual portfolio review that included state and USDA as well as USAID and collated all of the information to show how we were reaching the 20% poverty reduction and 20% reduction in stunting. Because USAID's activities were one component, but there were also other agencies working towards that same goal. And so being able to everyone coming together and being able to talk about their results and how it all comes together to achieve the higher level goal was really important. I think one other example I can say for Power Africa that was helpful too was, and it's super simple, but it just doesn't happen in a lot of other sectors, is it was a one-pager or two-pager on what every single agency was doing, the tools that they offered, and it was something USAID and state being at the ground level, we could just hand it out. And it just really helped to emphasize all of the tools, all of the services that the US government could provide in the energy sector and make those linkages. One other example that I have is the US Chamber of Commerce did a sort of event bringing together US private sector and local private sector, and that was a really great way, this was for energy as well, to make those linkages. So there are a lot of different examples that I think could be applicable depending on the context of the missions that we could use.
Thanks, Agatha. So Agatha's laid out a bunch of different processes. What strikes me is that there's both coordination at the technical level with all of these initiatives. As we heard through Feed the Future, there are portfolio reviews, working groups set up through Power Africa, but then also very, very high level engagement to remove blockages where there's potentially political issues. Erin talked about that this morning and the role state can play there. Are there any specific recommendations you have in terms of what has worked well to ensure strong coordination from that technical level up to the political level?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I think the working group discussions were very helpful because our political econ colleagues would attend, and they're really the conduit to the ambassador. But also regular meetings between the mission director and the ambassador also occur, and so there's feeding information that way. But I think there's the working group level. It's really strategic discussions about what do we want to be saying to the host country government. How do we say that in the best, most effective way? How do we back that up with the services that we're providing on the aid side? Really trying to understand all of the strategic tools, but just the dialogue that we can be having with the host country government and coordinating that at the mission level is key.
That's great. So I think hearing from Agatha is incredibly useful as we think about what it really means to move to this next phase of implementation, particularly in our high priority countries. We now have high priority country plans for all 13 countries. And in terms of how we take those forward, both having a coordination platform for the full interagency at the level of the high priority countries and making sure that on the foreign assistance side, we're duly elevating water and sanitation so it is considered at that strategic level will certainly help us speak with one voice as the US government back to our host country counterparts. But I'm keenly aware that from the civil society side, NGOs, private sector, we have a number of folks here in the room, and Erin talked about this not only being a whole of government approach, but a whole of America approach. And really from a multi-stakeholder perspective, very curious to hear about your respective experiences, both interacting with the host country and with embassies abroad and what we should be thinking about as we try and structure these. So we really wanted to open this up now and hear from you all about what you think has worked well in your experience at the country level and what we should be considering as we represent back out to our host country government counterparts and try and structure our internal processes to be able to take the strategy forward. So wanted to open it up for Q&A now. Both happy to take your recommendations and answer any questions about the CDCS or ICS process that we laid out in the beginning.
Thank you. I'm Sasha Kuoshima from EPA. I've recently worked with in the country level in Cape Verde, and I found the country assistance and coordination extremely well functioning over there. And I wanted to touch on the aspect that Agatha had mentioned repeatedly on the energy side, and a lot of the work, technical as well as what's needed in the country, is energy and water. So in order for moving water and development, our technical assistance in terms of bringing drinking water, pipelines to the households, a lot of it is related to the energy development in the country as well. I just wanted to ask Agatha about these interrelatedness between water, energy, agriculture nexus, which has been talked about thematically, and how it actually can be implemented at the country level. I mean, we have been exploring financing in broadening the financing for water through energy projects. But if you have any reflections in your with related to energy development in the countries you've worked in, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you for that question. I think integration is incredibly complex and can be difficult, somewhat because of the funding streams that we have and the earmarks that are associated with water, with agriculture, with the biodiversity, for example, is another earmarked funding stream that guide how that funding can be used. But I think that more and more we're looking at how to, because of this systems thinking that we're trying to do more and more of, we are trying to look at how to better integrate where it makes sense and when it's really feasible. In Senegal, we were looking at the agriculture and energy and water nexus because in the north there's irrigation along the river, and that's where a lot of the agriculture takes place because it's a very dry area, and a lot of the need was for electricity to power agro-processing and do a lot of the value added. And so we had to, you have to consider all of the uses of the water, which if there's a dam, you're looking at water from, the use of water for energy, but then also looking at energy to be able to provide water. So there's definitely an important linkage. The way that missions program is oftentimes looking at all of those aspects, but focusing also on the results that we need to achieve for each sector. So it's a difficult issue, and I think more and more we're trying to integrate. But I
actually, I have an interesting example that just recently came up that I was quite fascinated by. So with Power Africa, obviously that is very much focused on what we were talking about this morning, leveraging private capital to expand energy access, and very transaction focused, trying to identify investors to invest in different energy deals. We recently, in working with our Development Credit Authority office, came across using some existing energy guarantees on the water side, which I thought was particularly quite interesting, that things like solar pumping, as you rightly mentioned, energy is needed to move water around, and I think that there are a lot of areas for potential integration that Agatha mentions that there are funding streams that drive our work, but it's quite interesting to me that these are coming up, that they do exist, and it's something that we can and are looking at. Oh.
Hi, Ellen Walter from IRC. So it's great to hear that there is all of these opportunities, I think, for this collaboration to happen, and that it is happening in a number of places. I think I have a couple questions and kind of comments, but I'll keep it short. I think the consultations that you were talking about for preparations of the inter-collaboration country plans, that's not the name for them, but the CDCS?
CDCS,
yeah. Making sure that that external consultation, people are actually aware of when that's happening. I think it happens really well in certain places, and there might be opportunities for that type of bringing in other folks to the mix in a more coordinated way, and I think that we'll see that happen as time goes on. But a couple of things that I think would be interesting is there's a lot of programs that deal with WASH, and some of them, or water more broadly. And so an example in Ethiopia, there's a lot of, there's WASH Transform and the Sustainable WASH Systems, and that type of collaboration that's happening between the different programs. I think there's an opportunity for information sharing and learning across those programs that all of the agencies and all of the variety of work that's happening can be brought up in more of a informal or even formal kind of presentations and in brown bags and other ways for people to know what others are doing within the country for that united voice that you were talking about. And then I think also putting out some type of I guess sharing the guidance more broadly with everyone, both within the different agencies, but also the rest of the partners that are out there, so that there is an understanding of, if you want to engage, here's how you can do that. And so I think sharing access to documentation and the guidance and things that are coming along, I think will be a really good opportunity both here in Washington, so that it can be dispersed in multiple levels, because as we know, when you have the missions and we have our country offices, that information travels in a variety of ways. So just trying to attack it in all of the different ways, I think, would be a great opportunity. So thanks.
Simone, it looks like there's a question up front.
Mohammed Chaban from Water for Life. We've talked earlier about integration of energy and water. My question is about integration of water resources and wash. And in most projects for the past few years, most of the, there's except one project, which is the Waridi project in Tanzania, that has the integration of water resources and water supply and sanitation. Given the fact that many countries in the world are suffering from water scarcity, okay, and sustainability of water and sanitation depends on sustainability of the resources. And I would like to just basically see, I read the strategy and there is a component on water resources, but I would like to see more integration of water resources and water supply and sanitation. We have developed recently with the UN Habitat a guide on improvement of water and sanitation utilities, and water supply was one of the performance, okay, for water utilities to just watch out to. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed. So absolutely, we agree 110%, and that is why in our agency-specific plan we have called out a specific development result on water resources management, and that is a big shift. So we are thinking through that and would very much value your inputs in the breakout sessions, both on WASH and WRM. Hopefully you're attending both. Quickly on Ellen's point, you mentioned coordination amongst projects within country. And I do think that there are some innovative platforms that some of our missions are beginning to roll out and use. Kenya in particular, where Jim, Liz Jordan, and I just came back from, are structuring quarterly meetings across all implementing partners working on water and sanitation, and that's something that we're seeing more and more. And thinking through, that's just on the aid side, but getting all those ducks in a row so that when we do represent at the country team level back up to the ICS, that's all packaged and coordinated in a very clear way, so that when you have that interaction between technical and working at higher political level and representing back to the host country government, that is not seen in isolation on a projectized basis, but contributing to a broader whole. So that is something that is being rolled out more and more in a lot of our priority countries, and I think something that you can expect to see more of. So.
And also, if I can add, in Senegal, what we were trying to do was a technical assistance to the Ministry of Water, which included their Department on Water Resource Management. And that was a direct grant to the ministry that we're trying to develop, because I think we all agree that water resource management is critical to water supply, but then all of the other uses, obviously, for water. I think another thing that we did in Senegal that was pretty interesting, to the first point, was having trips over to areas where we had a lot of implementing partners working on a lot of different sectors. They were called synergy site visits. Our mission director often went, and all of the IPs gathered for a one-day kind of workshop to discuss how they were working together, if they were working together, where there were synergy opportunities for synergy. So this included our ag, our WASH, our health programs, and the different officers that work on those sectors. And this was happening on a quarterly basis. So in the field, having meetings regularly to talk about where there were opportunities for integration, where we could be achieving efficiencies, and really, again, taking the systems approach to development, because without education, without health, all of those sectors impact each other in different ways. So it was really good to have those different kinds of conversations. I think another, at a more macro level, Power Africa has these annual meetings where they bring together all of the officers at the field level that are working on in Power Africa countries, but also inviting donors. So the World Bank is part of Power Africa, DFID is part of Power Africa, CEDA, and then also inviting the different USG agencies, obviously, to all come together and talk about every program in every country. What are the challenges? How can we make it work better? And I think that was also a really great way to further the coordination and collaboration. And if I can add one more thing. The other thing that we have to do when we're in a country is look at what the other donors are doing, because we want to avoid duplication. So again, in Senegal, there were other donors working much more on water resource management, and that at the time when I was there designing programs, we didn't consider that to be our comparative advantage. We were looking much more at the private sector development, market development, strengthening, but there was this gap in terms of capacity at the government level, so that's where we decided to focus our resources. But we also, always need to be considering what other donors are doing and where we can leverage that.
We have time for one more question before lunch.
Yeah, Christopher Lindsay with the IATMO Group, and I think this conversation on coordination at the country level with the U.S. government partners is a critical one. From an industry perspective, quite often, we're dealing with USTDA, we're dealing with foreign commercial services officers, and quite frankly, there's silos. There's a disconnect between what's happening in our sector with those officers versus with what USAID. And I realize it's a two-way street, but I think that even going beyond the ICFs, getting that some of these conversations, some of these meetings taking place will be crucial moving forward. We've been pleased to see how the interagency working group here in DC incorporates a lot of these partners, and we're very curious to see how that interagency cooperation gets down to the mission level and to the actual embassy.
Yeah, fully agreed, and I think that we're at a really critical juncture here. The process that we went through to develop the strategy, I think, really positions us. We have those dialogues going, not only with USAID missions, but as Jim and Erin mentioned in their opening remarks, all of those high priority country plans were briefed at country team meetings. Other agencies were made aware, and that's where you see those other touch points with the interagency referenced in those country plans. So our intention is really to maximize the process that we went through in the development of those country plans to make sure that similar coordination and collaboration continues through this 5-year period. So happy to continue the conversation, but we really did want to make sure that we hammer this home, because this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of our work in country.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff and Agatha. And I think as you guys leave the stage, just a few notes as we move into the lunchtime. In the interest of cost effectiveness, we are going to be offering box lunches. So you'll find those in the back of the room. You can grab one and come out. And also a note for those folks who are here representing the interagency, if you are interested in hosting a table, because we really hope to promote this idea of engaging with members of the interagency that represent agencies or organizations that you, as our implementing partners, might be interested in chatting with. So if you are here representing the interagency, please find Oliver, show of hands in the back. He's got a placard with the name of your agency on it, and you can sort of take that to a table, and then folks can identify the agencies that they might like to chat with. Also, just a quick note, as after lunch, around 1 p.m., we'll start the first of the 2 breakout sessions. You'll hear the chime at 2 o'clock, and you'll move to the second one. Just to reiterate the room locations of the breakout sessions, here in the Great Hall, we'll have the session on drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene. For water sector governance, finance, and institutions, you'll be upstairs in B203/204. For water resources management, you'll be in the back room here, the Peace Links room. For transboundary and cooperation around water, you'll be in upstairs again in room B214/215. Okay, so I hope that you all enjoy your lunch and have a great productive conversation, and look forward to seeing you in the breakout session.